Hello, and 3 times hello, and welcome back to JPzilla. And do we have even more stuff to talk about today? Before we get into this episode, I would like to give out a resounding spoiler warning for this video, and I mean it. If you have not watched episode 3 of Legacy of Monsters, click away in 3, 2, 1. Now, for an update on my Meganulon theory from the last video. For those of you who did not watch my last video, I theorized that the bug creatures from episode 1 may be a recurring Toho creature named Meganulon, which has a Godzilla-sized queen named Megaguirus. In Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, this queen of the Meganulons squared off against Godzilla himself, and I theorized that we could see the return of Megaguirus in later episodes of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, and that these bug monsters from episode 1 were in fact Meganulons. So apparently, the director of Monarch Legacy of Monsters already revealed the name of these bug creatures, which he calls endoswarmers. However, my theory, as far-fetched as it may seem, could still be possible, as this could just be a name to throw people off. However, Legendary actually licensing a Toho kaiju, especially for something general audiences may consider a generic bug monster, was always unlikely. But it may not surprise me if this show could still take inspiration from my favorite bug monster, and have a queen endoswarmer similar in appearance to Megaguirus. A megaswarmer, if you will. In fact, I expect a kaiju-sized queen bug, as after the trio of the 50 set off the explosions, there were cracks forming in the ground that I don't think were simple aftershocks from the explosions. It was these earthquakes even, which awakened the larvae. Not to mention, there must have been something which laid those eggs in the first place. And while it could be a smaller sub-titan creature more on the lines of a skull crawler, I suspect this thing to be a fully fledged titan with similarities to the Muto species from 2014. The next thing I want to talk about is an update on another theory I had. This time, the theory that Lee Shaw may have been a secret Monarch recruiter. For those of you who did not watch my last episode, I drew connections to the comic book prequel to Godzilla 2014, Godzilla Awakening, which showed the founding of Monarch and the hunt for Godzilla by Eiji Serizawa, the father of Ishiro Serizawa from the movies, and a character by the name of Shaw. That Shaw had been involved in monster hunting since 1946, and I theorized the TV version of the character may have been playing dumb about monsters in his 1952 scenes, in which he seems to think that monsters was a crazy thing to exist, because he was acting as an undercover recruiter for Monarch, trying to recruit Bill Randa and Dr. Mura. Episode 3, however, seems to show the founding of Monarch in 1954 and not 1946, as Lee refers to Monarch as our little monster hunting club, indicating Monarch has not been founded on an official government basis yet, whereas in the comic it was founded by the government in 1946. If this is truly the founding of Monarch, then the comic book is disregarded and this version of Shaw is not working undercover for Monarch, but is just getting around to becoming one of its founding members in 1954, instead of his previous role in founding Monarch in 1946, according to the comic. However, in spite of the fact it appears that Lee, Randa, and Keiko are founding Monarch in 1954, when Lee is asked by Kentaro in the later scenes, set in 2015, when Monarch was founded, Shaw responds late 40s instead of 1954. This may indicate that the 1946 timeline is still valid in some way, and that perhaps, unlike the comic, Monarch was an active organization, and Shaw was actually working for Monarch, as I theorized, as an undercover recruiter. However, it would still diverge from the comics, as in Godzilla Awakening, and a line from Kong Skull Island, Monarch was founded by the United States government instead of the organization starting out in an unofficial capacity. Also, the show seems to regard the Godzilla footprint as the only proof of Godzilla's existence, whereas in the comic there were dozens of eyewitness reports gathered by Eiji Serizawa of Godzilla fighting Shinomura, as well as several ancient depictions of Godzilla in places like the Chauvet Caves, which is actually a real cave, by the way. One of the biggest discrepancies from the comic, however, is the seeming retcon of the villain monster of Godzilla Awakening, named Shinomura. Shinomura, whose name is derived from the Japanese for Swarm of Death, was the main antagonist of the comic book Godzilla Awakening, set in 1946 and 1954. In the comic, the atomic bomb that they used against Godzilla was actually meant to also kill Shinomura. However, in the TV show, we only see Godzilla. So this show seems to ignore comic continuity a lot. So what do I think that means for the future episodes of Monarch Legacy of Monsters? Certain incongruities may almost make it seem like they know nothing about the comics and would not include anything from the comics into the show. However, the character of Shaw shows they do indeed pull in some elements from the comics, even if they use those elements a little bit differently. So don't be surprised to see comic book elements being used a little inconsistently throughout the series, perhaps even bringing in elements from The Birth of Kong, Kingdom Kong, Godzilla Aftershock, Godzilla Dominion, and of course, Godzilla Awakening. A Titan commonly theorized to play a role in the show is Muto Prime, who featured in the prequel comic book to Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla Aftershock. This comic actually took place very close to Monarch Legacy of Monsters, in that it was set in 2014, and the show was set in 2015. The Muto Prime is the mother of the two Mutos from the 2014 movie Godzilla, and tried to lay its parasite eggs in Godzilla, an active source of radiation. Muto Prime could certainly serve as a very big antagonist to the show, as she is one of the few Titans to actively hunt down and endanger Godzilla's life. Next, I want to talk about Freezer Breath, aka the Arctic Mole. He appeared at the end of the show, smashing out of the ice in Alaska and freezing Duho to death in a very unfortunate scene because he was such an awesome character, and I really wish I could have seen more of him. What I want to point out is that when he froze Duho, he was not breathing out ice, not in the same way Godzilla was breathing out atomic fire, that is. He was actually breathing in heat. This especially reminds me of an episode of Godzilla the series, a cartoon based off of the 1998 American movie Godzilla, or less affectionately known by fans as Zilla. In the episode Freeze, there was a colony of Arctic moles who also bore through the ice similar to Freezer Breath. Being in the Arctic, they needed to produce heat at a molecular level, giving them a very high body temperature. This special adaptation designed to sustain enough heat to live in cold environments could be reflected in this new monster from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, in which, instead of producing heat for himself at a molecular level, this monster literally eats the body heat of its victims to sustain itself, which just sounds really cool and really scary if you ask me. But is this where the similarities end? In Godzilla the series, there is a whole colony of Arctic moles. Could there be a similar colony of Freezer Breath creatures waiting to attack Kate Randa and company? Only time can tell, but I think that is more likely than there just being one of these creatures. Another thing I want to quickly note is that this Titan glows blue, similar to another certain Titan we know so well. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, I obviously mean Godzilla. What do I think this means? I think it means that, unlike other less important Titans, this creature may have a connection to the Hollow Earth, living there and sucking up all the Hollow Earth energy, just like Godzilla once did, as evidenced by ancient murals depicting Godzilla in the Hollow Earth, and the fact that the Hollow Earth energy perfectly matches Godzilla's, and he obviously has a link to it as he sensed when Kong activated the throne room. So what does it mean if this creature has a connection to the Hollow Earth? I think it means there must be another Hollow Earth entrance very close by, just like the one in Antarctica. In fact, I think that this is what Hiroshi was investigating all along. If Hiroshi was investigating another entrance into the Hollow Earth, it could add a whole new layer to the story, which could help it tie in to later Godzilla movies such as Godzilla vs. Kong, and the upcoming Godzilla X Kong, in which we see another creature glowing with a very similar blue energy to Godzilla and to this Arctic mole thing. As a side note, I just looked it up, and apparently this Arctic mole from Monarch Legacy of Monsters is called a Frostvark. Speaking of Godzilla the series, I want to talk about that French special agent working with Tim. In Godzilla the series, French special forces were heavily involved with anything to do with Godzilla because in that series, it was the French government's bomb test which created Godzilla. The French government sent Monique, a special agent, to become a part of Dr. Tatopoulos' heat team. Considering that this show takes inspiration from some pretty niche sources, such as the prequel comics Godzilla Awakening, which inspired Shaw's character, but was basically disregarded in every other way, and the potential inspiration of the Frostbark, it would not surprise me terribly if Monique inspires this French special agent, perhaps also named Monique, but that is just a wild theory. And who knows, perhaps we'll see the return of other special French agents, such as Philippe Roche, who played a very big role in the actual Godzilla 98 movie, and in my opinion was one of the few highlights of that film. What I want to talk about next is Tim, because who else is more fun to talk about? When Verdugo talks to him, she seems to imply he has some sort of personal crusade going on, when she asks, is this about our mission or yours? Perhaps he too has some personal tie to Hiroshi Randa, and is maybe another one of his long-lost sons. Okay, in case you can't tell, I was totally joking, but I do wonder what his personal crusade could be. Is it his alone, or is there a faction in Monarch diverging from the accepted status quo? Perhaps looking to return to the cowboy days Lee Shaw was talking about, which is why he is after Bill Randa's old files, the same files Verdugo completely disregards. I believe the story may be going in a way that Tim may be a part of a faction in Monarch who wants to return to the old ways of doing things instead of the data-driven, secretive mindset of the new Monarch, but I still believe it is more personal than that. What his personal motivation could be, I don't know, but I do know that the mystery is keeping me on the edge of my seat. This has been my analysis of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, Episode 3, Secrets and Lies. If you enjoyed this video, and want to see my commentary in the next 7 episodes, then please click that subscribe button, give this video a like, comment your theories down below, and share this video with anyone else interested in Godzilla. Until then, waiting for Episode 4, this has been JP Zilla.